Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Spontaneous Brilliance podcast. The last podcast that I did, I was inspired by a phrase I used to say to my kids all the time. That one was garbage in, garbage out. And it made me think of the other things I used to say to my kids all the time. I still say them all the time. And this one is, everything is all right in the end. If it isn't all right, it isn't the end. And I used to say that to my kids when they were little, especially the first two that I adopted, Andy and Brittany. I adopted them when they were 4 and 9, and Shelley was about 13. They came from foster care and really rough upbringings, and they would have some interesting responses to adversity. or a challenge. And they both had fetal alcohol syndrome, and their frustration levels could get really high really fast. And they were worriers. They were just born worriers because they had a lot of impermanence in their world very young. And so I would always say to them, okay, this is just a thing. This is just something that we're working through. Everything is all right in the end. If it isn't all right, it isn't the end. And that is something that my kids, now that the 4-year-old is 25 and the 9-year-old is 30, about to turn 31, she particularly, my 30-year-old, says it to me all the time. She looks at her life that way. And she's had challenges that extraordinary challenges that she has transcended. And that's kind of her mantra. And I think about that. I think it was my way of keeping them going forward and not just sitting down and over accepting the problem. And now in Spontaneous Brilliance land, I talk about everything in terms of offering, accepting, and blocking, and that we want to accept, as in acknowledge, but we don't want to over accept, right? Accepting means acknowledging. It doesn't mean acquiescing or surrendering to. That's what was always something that I was trying to move the girls away from, was sitting down in the middle of the problem and going, oh, well, this sucks. Like, think about it. When we're watching the Lassie episode, and I'm dating myself. There may be those of you out there that don't even know who Lassie is. Wonderful doggy, and her owner was a little boy named Timmy. And there's a perpetual joke about Timmy falling in the well, right? And Lassie barking to say that Timmy fell in the well, right? But when Timmy falls in the well, nobody does just go, dang, well, that sucks. Sucks for Timmy, and I'll miss him. We don't just stand around and wait either until we've figured out all the ins and outs and possibilities of how we might get him out of the well. We start taking action to get Timmy out of the well, right? And that's what everybody does in that story, is it's about getting Timmy out of the well, not accepting that, oh, darn it, Timmy's in a well. That's bad. We go looking for the how to create the good, how to create the story the way we want it to become. I always say that I take people in my coaching, I take them to the intersection of creative imagination, personal responsibility, and inspired action. And so let's look at everything is all right in the end. If it isn't all right, it isn't the end, in terms of those three things: the creative imagination, the personal responsibility, and inspired action. And first piece, like when I draw this diagram for people, this is an audio podcast, so I don't have any way to show this to you, but it's a triangle with personal responsibility is at the bottom. And then the two sides are the creative imagination and the inspired action. But the foundational part, the part that I put at the bottom of this little pyramid paradigm diagram, is the personal responsibility. Like any good actor, the thing that we do when Timmy falls in the well is we embrace the obstacle. We know that it's here to inspire us, to push us, to cause us to problem solve. So we start to move into that mode and own that it's ours to solve. Solve being the operative word in problem solve. We're moving toward the end that we desire. We're taking responsibility for that movement. Abraham Hicks says, you know what you don't want, so you know what you do want. So that when you notice the contrast in Abraham Hicks terms, you're noticing the difference between what is existing in your universe at that moment that you don't want. It's not there for you to sit down in the middle of and go, dang, didn't want life to be like this. It's there for you to say, I recognize what I don't want, so now I can initiate what I do want. And a playwright, we're all playwrights, right? We're not just the players on the great stage of life. We are the playwrights. We are writing the story we are living. We are creating our reality, right? And when we take responsibility for that, when we take responsibility in the unhyphenated sense in terms of that we own that we recognize it and we own it. We accept it. We acknowledge it as a fact, right? That we are the playwright. We are writing this story. So the playwright knows the message they want to send. They know the story that they want to create, the message that they want their story to convey. And they don't identify the conflict or the problem that everybody's going to solve. They don't identify that conflict in the story so that is all the story is about. That is no fun whatsoever, and we don't watch that. We don't watch people just sit around and talk about Timmy in the well. We watch people try to get Timmy out of the well, and Timmy try to get out of the well, and Lassie try to communicate through barking that Timmy's in the well, and dragging the people to the well to see. That's what we watch, is everybody problem solving. We don't watch them problem swimming, right? We don't watch them just hanging out in that problem. So we identify the conflict as the playwrights. We identify the struggle. We identify the obstacles, but we embrace them. And once we know them, then we can say, what's the gift in this, right? It's an offer. You're the playwright, not just the player. You're recognizing that, yes, you're playing this character and you are writing this masterpiece that you call your life. You're playing a character in a story of your own creation. So being the playwright means that we've not only created our character, but we've also created all the other characters, all the given circumstances, everything that is in our entire life, all of it. We're choosing what to create. We're choosing what to keep. Your choices are everything. Remember the Stella Adler quote, your talent lies within your choice. Well, we say your success lies within your choice. Your responsibility is your choices. We are deciding moment to moment our thoughts, our feelings, our actions that we take. We decide the people and the places and the things that we choose to keep as a part of our story. It all becomes part of this production of our life. It's here in our life. And if it's here in our life, it's here because we have written it into the fabric of our experience. If we did not write it, it would not be here. If we did not imagine it, it would not be here. Everything is all right in the end. So what we need to start doing when we face that obstacle is not swimming in it, but noticing that it's okay, it's here. There's a gift in this. It is meant to inspire us to move forward. You came here to experience in this time-space reality. That is what we're here for. And not only experiencing the striving or the giving up and just waiting until it's all over and we can leave the planet. It's not about that. It's about experiencing the success, the striving, and then the meaning of it. Remember the difference between accepting and over-accepting. Over-accepting is when we just let the offer of someone else, or we let our past offer, or we let an offer from the universe become the thing that we just keep accepting and keep accepting and keep accepting and keep accepting as though it's a new offer all the time. And when we over accept, that becomes blocking. There is nothing happening to you. Everything's happening for you. And there is nothing happening for you that is meant to just stay stagnant there. It's not the end, or it would not be there giving you an obstacle. Obstacles are there for us to overcome. Obstacles are there for us to exercise our muscles on. They're not there for us to just decide, oh, well, this looks hard, so time for a nap, right? It's not about a lifelong nap. That is not what we came here for. Lifelong snoozy time because this feels hard. What's that line from A League of Their Own where Tom Hanks says, of course it's hard. It's supposed to be hard. If it wasn't hard, everyone would do it. Well, of course there are obstacles, and of course overcoming them is hard. That's what makes it an adventure. That's what makes overcoming it so cool. So the end is actually a beautiful place, always. The end is not the place where you sit down and rest. That's just where you're regrouping and getting your breath and getting ready to go into moving forward again. So since everything is all right in the end, then we know that this story that you're writing, it's time to write the next scene. If you're in a scene you don't like, then move to writing the next scene. And nowadays on the news and stuff, we see the stories that other people are writing and they drop us off a cliff of despair or reoccurring impending doom. And they seem to be indicating that we don't have any chance of affecting that story. We don't have any chance of changing that story, that we don't have any power to control the story. Yes, we do. We have to first separate ourselves from swimming in the offers of others. We can control how we respond. If you can imagine it, you can achieve it. If you can dream it, you can become it. That is literally up on my wall and has been for as long as I can remember. I truly believe that. So that takes us to the second point of those three parts of the paradigm: personal responsibility, creative imagination, and inspired action. So now we're on creative imagination. Creative imagination is not just random imagining. It's not just the thoughts that drift past our head, because we've already talked about the fact that we're always imagining, because the second that we reference anything, we're visualizing it, we're seeing it, and we're worrying about it, and we're projecting it, and we're reimagining the past, and we're doing all these things all the time. So creative imagination is intentional imagining, intending to create. You know, when a playwright sits down to write their story, to write the play that they are intending to write, they don't know every word they're going to write when they sit down, but they start imagining the scenario. And they start imagining the characters, and they start imagining the way that this might go, and then the way they want it to go, and then they take all those steps to get it there. But it starts with imagining. And when we start imagining how we want the end to be, because remember, everything is all right in the end of whatever sequence we're in, everything is all right. That's how you know it's the end. Because there is nothing left freaking you out, flipping you out, bothering you, nagging at you, bringing you pain in this experience. When you are at the end is when the end of this sequence is when everything is all right. And we could get into, okay, everything's all right all the time anyway, but we won't go there. We're going to stick with this phrase, and we're going to stick with looking at this chain in that way. Neville Goddard says, think from your desired state, not about it. So Neville Goddard was famous for saying that you assume the wish fulfilled, right? That you think from that place of when it's already at the end, that you live from that place and you accept, here we are in accepting again, that you accept that that thing is and is that you want, that end that you desire is. And so that's the way that you are approaching this, is that you already know that in the end, everything is all right. And so that's what you're moving to, is the all right. You don't get stuck in the cursed house, right? What Mike Dooley calls the cursed house, because we know that if you do get stuck in the cursed house, then you can just get in this little revolving, micromanaging, pre-planning every nuance process to get Timmy out of the well. But if you do that, then Timmy's screwed, because you're never going to actually go start, or it'll take you too long to start just taking action. You envision what you want to have happen, which is Timmy getting out of the well. And if you're seeing that hug, then you're assuming the state of the wish fulfilled in the Neville Goddard way of looking at it, right? You're assuming Timmy's coming out of the well. And so what you're imagining is the hugging and embracing of Timmy when you get him out of the well, right? And then the rest of the how becomes a part of moving toward that. But you don't just focus on, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? How am I going to make this happen? You are imagining, you're knowing, you're envisioning, you're breathing into being. You are creating the future through your actions, your choices, your thoughts, your words, your deeds. You're creating consciously when you take on the faith in the story that you're here starring in. Remember that we've talked about the difference between belief and faith. Belief is knowing that you could do it. Faith is having the courage to do it. Do you have faith? Do you have not only that knowing, but then the courage to live as though it's already right, to behave as if, in acting terms, behaving as if it's true. Acting is behaving truthfully in imaginary circumstances. So living is behaving truthfully in the circumstances that you are imagining into being. So do you have faith? Do you have faith that everything is all right in the end? Let's just stop for a second and think about that. If you think about the challenges in your life, the things that seem like obstacles, whether they're financial or they're health related or they're relationship related or they're job related or they're your creative process related, anything that feels like a challenge or feels like, ooh, that's a big, deep well. And whatever my little Timmy, my treasured, precious baby is that's in there, that is what I want, it looks like it's lost in this deep, dark well of obstacles, of conflict, of struggle. Do you have the faith? Which is your dominant thought? About the well or about the embracing and loving of your metaphorical Timmy, right? Which is the thing that is your dominant thought? Is it the thing that you want? Is that what you're spending your time imagining? Is it the end that you wish to write as the playwright? Or is it about the conflict that you've already written? I said that on purpose. If you've got a conflict, if you've got an obstacle, if you've got an issue, you're the playwright, not just of the good stuff in your life. If it's here, you created it. Your soulful self created it for you to experience working with it. That's how we beef up our muscles as conscious creators, is that we strive to transcend these things that we have brought into our lives for our benefit, for our growth, for our striving. So what's yours? What's yours right now? There might be 20 of them. There might be 2 of them. There might be something that seems, just one that seems profoundly insurmountable. But what is one? Think about one, okay? Does the problem part of it, does the obstacle thing, does this challenge and the worrying about it hold more of your thought process, more of your imagining than imagining the end, the everything is all right in the end part, right? Which one gets more of your attention? Which one are you applying your creative imagination to? Because if you can accept that you are the playwright of everything, it's here for you, and you brought it, then if you're envisioning the play playing out as you imagine, are you allowing yourself to feel happy about that? About where it's going? Where you know it's going, not where you're afraid it's not going. See the difference? If you are feeling afraid of what if it doesn't go there, that is imagining, that is leaning into that fear. And that's what we're creating, is more of the fear. That's what we're writing, is more of the story that is still about the struggle. We have to accept that knowing the ending of the play that we're writing, knowing the play that we mean to write, is the primary task at hand. Accepting that we are the playwright, accepting that our imagination is the typewriter or the computer, any way you look at it. It's your laptop. When the playwright is writing a play, envisioning the scenes, they're imagining what they want it to be like. There are so many playwrights that over the years and over the centuries of playwriting have literally changed the art form because they envisioned a way to do it that nobody else had imagined yet. Nobody else. And those that had imagined it hadn't written it down and actually taken that inspired action. And we aren't to inspired action yet. But a successful playwright writes the story that they're inspired to write, not the story that will be easy to do, not the story that will be simplest to do, but the story that you're inspired to write. And if you rewrite or cut your play, and I'm speaking to playwrights out there, if there are any playwrights listening, if you're rewriting or cutting based on what somebody else is telling you can or cannot be done on the stage, stop doing that. And just like in our life, if we're rewriting or cutting the play we're wanting to write because somebody is telling us that it can't be done, they don't know that. It's your play. This is your life. The inspiration that you have is yours. This is your creative imagining. This is your creation. You know, I used to direct a lot of new plays. And when I was in graduate school, I was part of the International Playwrights Workshop at the University of Iowa, and there were graduate playwrights there. A couple of them, well, I was one of them. I was both a graduate director and a playwright in the workshop as well, simultaneously. And so I was told one of the plays that I was writing was probably unproducible. The chair of the department at that time told me that there were too many characters for that play to be produced. And I worked with two playwrights in particular that screamed to mind that were told to cut out or bring down or whatever the piece that they wanted to put on the stage. One of those playwrights was Bob McEwen, who wrote a play called Son of a Gun. And it was about Sean McBride, who was a leader of the IRA back in a couple hundred years ago, or 150 years ago. And he was the son of Maud Gunn, and he was a terrorist. And then later in life, he became a human rights advocate. He was responsible for inspiring Amnesty International. He worked with the United Nations. And there was no explanation in the world as to what it was that converted him from being a terrorist to being a human rights leader and a peace leader. And so Bob wrote this play, and it was epic. And I mean, the scenes went from, 1 minute we're in a prison in a torture scene, and the next minute there's a ghost appearing, and the next minute you're in a very romantic love scene, and the next minute, and the scenes were all over the place. And I think it had 28 actors playing over 50 characters, and gunfire and people rappelling through a roof. I mean, it was intense, right? First thing Bob was told, that would make a good movie. That would make a good screenplay. But Bob wasn't writing a movie. He was writing something for the stage. And there were lots of directors and faculty telling him, yeah, that's good. Write it as a film. And I saw it and went, okay, this would be a cool challenge. Let's do it. And I talked this very concerned man into letting me, who he did not know, direct this production in the International Playwrights Conference. And I was like, it'll be fine. It'll be great. We can do this. We can do it. We did. We had helicopter pilots training people how to rappel straight down from this 40-foot high grid. It was magnificent. But Bob and I both trusted, and the actors trusted, that we could do it without sets. We did it literally. The thing that could not be changed, right, was the sets. So we did it with the set just being some blocks, and all this other stuff was realistic, and so realistic that we had people thinking that they'd seen things that they hadn't seen. But Bob was told couldn't be made for the stage. He couldn't tell the story he wanted to tell in the environment he wanted to tell it, because other people couldn't see that. And the same thing happened with a playwright, Lorenzo Sandoval, who wrote an absolutely wonderful, wonderful, crazy musical theater experience called Country Western Love at Chuck's Bar and Grill, where the whole thing is like, where you turn the theater basically into this giant karaoke country western bar. And when I first saw just a reading of it, I thought, wow, that's fun. That's cool. And part of what was so cool was a major character was this little 5-year-old girl who was the daughter of the lead. So when it was time for that to be produced, I said to Lorenzo, hey, I would love to direct that. And he handed me the script as it sat at the time, which had been 6-8 months after I had first heard it read. And it was completely different. And the little girl was gone. And it took all the life out of this story. And I was like, what happened? Wait a minute. And he said, well, I was told that I would never be able to put it on with that little girl. And there wasn't a 5-year-old that could do it. And I was like, let that be my problem. Let's go back to the script you wanted to write. Let's do that. We did it. By the way, my daughter Shelley, at 5 years old, wound up playing that role, and she was astounding. and the play was an incredible experiential audience involvement thing. It was amazing. And it would not have been, that experience would not have been for audiences if he had listened to what he shouldn't write, what couldn't happen. With my play, Avatara, 13 characters, an ensemble piece for 13 characters. And I had the chair of the department at the time tell me, that really, you should cut some of those characters out. But there was a reason there were 13 of them, and it was integral to the story, and each of the characters was very, very, very important to the story and to me, and I kept it that way. And when I produced it as a play at New Heritage Theater Company years later, it was one of our most popular productions, and the audience grew and grew and grew every night. And then people kept asking us when we were going to do it again. When can we do it again? And wanted us to restage it because it was so popular. And it was not hard to find the 13 characters, and it was not bizarrely expensive because it was a single set play. So, I'm going into way too much detail here about these plays, but the point is there will always be somebody to tell you not to write the story you're imagining that would be the story you want to write. But don't listen to that. Write the story you want to write. See the end you want to see. Remember that creativity is the conscious and deliberate evolutionary process of developing a thought or thoughts in the imagination and then taking action on those thoughts in order to manifest change, alter perception, enhance understanding, or bring into being something as yet unrealized in our awareness or physical activity. Okay? That's your job. That's your job in your life. Bring into being something as yet unrealized in your awareness or your physical reality. If that is what is happening, and that is what you are supposed to be doing, then don't let anybody tell you that what you are imagining is not yours to imagine. You go toward the end of the story you're wanting to write, because whatever the question is, remember, the answer is you. You have limitless resources, but you have to access and activate them. The universe is limitless, and the universe is conscious of being limitless. The only one who's not conscious of being limitless is us when we forget that. So remember that the important third step is that taking inspired action step. It is that step of taking inspired action. So you have the imagining, you accept that your imagination is the typewriter, and then you take that step of taking inspired action. What you are imagining, you have to do it. If you're Bob, you have to write the play. If you're Lorenzo, you have to write the play. If you're Sandy, you have to write the play. If you're you have to write the play of your life. You have to take the steps. You have to take action. And getting that production to the stage is about holding to that commitment to your vision. What you are envisioning, that is what you are taking inspired action toward. It can be baby steps, but it's some step every day. Take that inspired action, okay? So you own it. You take the personal responsibility. You apply your creative imagination. You see that end and you go toward it. And then you take inspired action. Remember, acting is active. You're a character here on the great stage of life. It's to you to take action. And remember, again, I'm going to say this again, no matter what the problem is that you are trying to solve, the answer is you. The answer is in you. It is about you. The privilege of a lifetime, the purpose of a lifetime is being who you are. To quote and rearrange the quote of Joseph Campbell, you're the playwright. You determine what's going to happen. You determine if Timmy's going to get out of the well. And you determine how you're going to feel when Timmy gets out of the well. And you're heading toward that feeling. You're heading toward the knowing. You're heading toward the end where everything's all right. And if you've got a challenge right now that you're not embracing, then just give yourself a chance to embrace it and write your play so that it is about the transcendence of that obstacle, transcending it, moving through it, working with it, helping it help you to become the greatest you can be, and find that end where everything is all right. Because it is. It always is. It always is. Everything is all right in the end. If it isn't all right, it isn't the end, my beauties. You know, anytime you need to be reminded of that, just find one of my kids. They'll tell you. All right. Thank you for being here with me today. This was a fun, festive little exploration. And I will talk to you again soon. But in the meantime, have a beautiful, glorious, blessing-filled week. And I'll see you soon. The Spontaneous Brilliance podcast is brought to you by Miracle Communications Group. Our producer is Michelle Oneida. Sound engineer is Corey Michaels at Corey Michaels Productions. Music is composed by Rex Miller. And I'm your host, Sandra Kavanaugh. You can learn more about me and all things Spontaneous Brilliance at sandrakavanaugh.com or spontaneousbrilliance.com. And please join the conversation here at the Spontaneous Brilliance Podcast by emailing us at podcast@spontaneousbrilliance.com.